I did a fantastical history video on the undead, and I talked in detail about the strengths and weaknesses therein. However, I think that it's important for me to state here that I really don't enjoy zombie stories. It's not because I find zombies particularly scary, quite the opposite. Zombies to me are not an enjoyable monster. Today, I want to explain the reason zombies are so beloved by horror fans, and then I want to explain why I personally find them irritating. See, the typical zombie follows a standard formula. A virus breaks out that infects the general public. It's very rarely explained where this virus came from, how it spread so fast, and why the CDC or community didn't react quicker to it. But all you need to know is that most of the world has been infected. The infection kills the host, but then shortly later reanimates them into a walking, moaning corpse with no memories of their former life. Only an unquenchable need to eat flesh and spread the plague. In a horrific way, zombies are a physical embodiment of how a virus works, as when they bite a human, the human becomes infected as well and will eventually succumb and join the undead horde. Now, zombies might have numbers, but they're pretty slow moving and not able to think or plan. They are brain dead, mindlessly wandering around and following the sound of their food or smell. So why are they scary? Why have they become so popular in the public eye? Well, there are various reasons, and I'll try to explain them as best as I can. Firstly, zombie plagues don't just create a threat for the protagonist or group, they also restructure the environment the protagonists dwell in as well. The world is a threat. There is no truly safe location to live or feel secure, as there's always the looming threat that zombie hordes will arrive to consume your flesh, or someone near you will turn and become a new threat. There's always a sense of danger around every corner. There can be no peace or rest. Anxiety and uncertainty infect the characters faster than the zombie plague, and as your friends and family begin to fall to the beasts one by one, it adds to the sense of isolation and fear. There's also the sense of hopelessness, that every day you're alive, you're just delaying the inevitable, that eventually you will die and the world will fall to this plague of death and disease. Another reason zombie stories are so loved is because it's a horror genre that focuses far more on the character than the monster. The zombies require no context or characterization. We don't need to explain the zombies' motives. We don't need to spend a great deal of time exploring the zombies' attributes, drives, and background. We can spend more time focusing on the survivors and their stories, how they cope with this new world, and explore their personalities. That's the reason Walking Dead has stayed as popular as it has. Few people seem to even care about the zombies in it anymore. In fact, most Walking Dead trailers I've seen, zombies only make up a fraction of the scene or dialogue. It's quite often about power struggles, attempts to rationalize with each other, or bemoaning the injustices of life. By making the characters the forefront of the story's time, we grow more close to these characters and want to see them succeed. But it also makes us feel the dread they do. The characters know that every day they risk life and death, and one small mistake can lead to fatality. We watch and care more about the characters and feel more attached to their struggles and trials, and so when one does inevitably fall, we feel for not only that character's death, but how it impacts the rest of the survivors. The monsters become a part of the background, something occasionally forgotten about as we are forced to focus more on the characters themselves. When a character we care about is bitten, it becomes even more difficult to bear. But, if I'm being honest, zombies as a rule just irritate me. Understand, I can see the appeal, but zombies always seem to be the worst horror monsters out there. For one thing, the genre is old and repetitive at this point. The cliches and tropes are all pretty much the same. In almost every zombie story, it follows a very similar narrative and has the same tropes. First, it will rarely be explained where the zombie virus came from or how it got to be this bad. But what is known is that for some reason the military was simply too inept or unable to stop the horde of zombies from overwhelming them, despite the fact that zombies have no sense of self-preservation and are usually slow and lumbering. However, despite the military being a bunch of pussies, a ragtag group of survivors, most of whom have little to no weapons training, can somehow outlast the zombies and evade them much more effectively. Right. Secondly, there will always be a de facto leader, and there will always be one other guy in the survivor group who constantly challenges this leader to either take his position as leader or to countermand him. Usually this person will be the one who gets torn apart by zombies in the end or betrays the group for his own selfish ends and interests. There will also likely be a kid character. This kid will usually be the source of innocence for the group that the rest all rally around and use as their motivation for continuing on because they want to defend that innocence. The kid will either become corrupted over time by the world that they are now in, acting as a metaphor for the degradation of human society in the face of tragedy, or they will be bitten and turned or just eaten, acting as another metaphor for the destruction of innocence in the face of devastation. Any symbols of government or authority after the zombie apocalypse will almost always be corrupt and be used as analogies to modern-day political leaders or ideals that are either outdated, heavily exaggerated, or just cartoonishly evil for no other reason than to be cartoonishly evil. Now, these are just a handful, but you can kind of see where I'm going with this line of thinking and discussion. In zombie stories, the same tropes and cliches tend to pop up, and after a while, I just begin making a checklist and even a drinking game that I just take and drink when I see it. Like, see a trope, take a drink. And if I'm being honest, I tried this with The Walking Dead. I had to stop after episode, what was it, 3 or 4? I just kept seeing them pop up again and again and again. My lord, it was awful. But that's just the narrative issues in zombie stories. The Walking Dead itself, being a TV show, does have the advantage of drawing out the tension and drama over a course of episodes. But the downfall of that is having a very repetitive series of seasons with very similar outcomes. In each season, it seems like the characters will hear about a safe haven and try to reach it. They find out that the safe haven does exist, but it's not what they think it is. They will meet new characters with their own baggage and their own problems. A few of the original cast from the previous season will die to be replaced by a few of the new characters in the new location, and then repeat this process as they go out to find a new safe haven because that first safe haven they were looking for gets overrun. I think that's just my chief problem with zombie stories overall. It's all repetitive. It's all the same. And as for zombies themselves, they are monsters that still just don't impress me. Sure, an undead person can be haunting, and the idea of dying and becoming one yourself is a scary concept. Sure, good, but it's a good thing zombies are pretty easy to deal with compared to most other monsters in cinema and literature. Look, when dealing with vampires or werewolves, the monstrous strength, intelligence, and supernatural gifts of these monsters make them dangerous and difficult to kill. They also are more difficult to ward off because normal means of safety like locked doors might not be enough to hold them off, and regular bullets and weapons might not be enough to kill them. They're usually smart enough to find you where you hide. And then if you look at slasher movie killers like Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, or Michael Myers, they're relentless and seem near unkillable, always able to withstand the death blows thrown at them. They're symbols of supernatural hatred. But zombies? They're walking meat bags with no sense of self-preservation. Their head is their biggest weak point, and even humans have enough sense to put on a helmet and hide behind something. They will destroy themselves to reach their prey, meaning that they will walk right into traps without a second thought. If they lose sight of or smell their prey, they will not be able to keep up the chase, and destroying their brain is their big weakness. The only threat a zombie can pose is if they are in a massive horde where they outweigh your surviving team in terms of numbers. That's why in most modern zombie movies and shows, they've had to help make them more viable by making the zombies move faster, like in World War Z or 28 Days Later, and others. This way the zombies can run and be harder to avoid, but just think about that for one moment. Zombies were becoming so unthreatening in the Hollywood world, they had to make zombies run faster to make them scary again. It always made me laugh when a survivor would explain that the undead just marched all over the military. That the military just couldn't handle a bunch of undead monsters. Seriously? How do trained military soldiers not know how to handle lumbering meat bags? How do humans not have the common sense to avoid an undead creature trying hard to bite you or grab you in hostility? Look, I've heard people argue, because the military doesn't train its soldiers to aim for the head. Well, first of all, of course they do. But second of all, even if they weren't, you mean trained riflemen don't know how to adjust their aim? And thirdly, so trained soldiers can't figure out how to kill zombies as an effective fighting force, but a ragtag group of survivors with limited training can somehow hold out longer than the goddamn army? Well, the only logical way I could believe the military lost an engagement with zombies is if the zombies were just so numerous that even with their training and gear, it was a losing battle. Which goes into my next question. How does the infection reach that critical point? Wouldn't steps be taken to stop the outbreak or stifle it? Wouldn't fire teams be sent in to put down the few smaller incidents before they grow out of control? Wouldn't police or National Guard come in handy? How did it get that bad? And you'll notice that most zombie stories very rarely give an explanation as to how it got started and why the infection got so bad. Without a practical or believable explanation, I just struggle to find credibility in what I'm seeing, and thus I lose interest fast. Now, I should mention there are 1 or 2 zombie stories that can do very well, and I think the best example I've seen yet is World War Z. The book, not the movie. To hell with that movie. The movie did nothing right. It ruined the book it was based on, and it's a cinematic sin if I've ever seen one. Unlike the movie, the book World War Z by Max Brooks, son of famous comedy director Mel Brooks, believe it or not, is not just one overarching story. It's a collection of interviews, news reports, and testimonials about when the world went through a massive zombie outbreak, as told by some of the survivors from around the world. They also explain very carefully how the plague got started. Apparently, the plague got loose in a small Chinese village, and due to illegal organ harvesting and selling on the black market, infected organs began going all over the world. Soon, people began having surgeries where infected tissues were put into their bodies, and they turned into zombies shortly after, biting and infecting hospital workers and doctors. The original countries where the illegal organs came from kept trying to cover up the incidents out of fear of consequences, but this only led to more and more cases all over the globe. Soon, whole pockets of communities were being taken, and the police were struggling to contain it. The military was finally called in when New York was being overrun, but the media just wanted a good story. They wanted big explosions and a huge show of force to convince the people that they had it under control. So the armed soldiers were given overly bulky armor, which weighed them down and made them sweat heavily, which didn't help them at all in the engagement. They gave them concussion explosives that would kill a normal human but wouldn't kill a zombie whose brain wouldn't be bothered by it, and then put them out in the open where they were easy prey for the zombie horde. When New York was lost to the monsters, politicians squabbled. Different countries began breaking off, choosing their own means of survival, turning to drastic measures like using some safe areas as safe houses that were false, where the undesirables of society would be led so that they could be bait for the zombie hordes. People had to travel north to colder climates so zombies would freeze in the winter, but this led to starvation and isolation for those survivors. The world truly came to the brink of destruction, but the story was well paced, well narrated, and a lot of it was incredibly engaging. It avoided several of the major cliches and showed a darker side of humanity that one could rarely see in most media, as well as a hopeful side. It's easily one of the best zombie stories I've ever read, and I highly recommend the book, not the stupid movie. Other good zombie stories include Night of the Living Dead. It's corny, but it's the first true zombie movie ever made, and it was cheap but well acted and performed. Dead Island is a kind of old and maybe weak game compared to other modern titles, but it tells a good zombie story that has a unique idea. What if there were some who were immune? This to me was a good idea and one that you don't see much in zombie stories, so I give that one a thumbs up at least. And while movies like Warm Bodies might be dumb flicks overall, it at least showed competency on how society might handle a zombie outbreak by walling off the city and sending in fire teams every now and then to scavenge for supplies. And there are others that are decent, I'm sure. But as I've said, I just don't enjoy zombie movies and games enough to really get into them or enjoy them. So I'm sure I missed a few diamonds in the rough. If you know any good zombie material out there that doesn't follow these tropes and cliches too close, feel free to share them in the comments. I attempted to make my own zombie story once called Reanimated, about a girl named Max who found a single vial of a vaccine for the zombie plague as a plague breaks out in Atlanta, Georgia. Trapped inside as the government has erected walls and barricades all around the city to prevent the plague from getting out, Max only has 3 weeks to get the vaccine out of the city and into the hands of the military before they firebomb the city to destroy the infestation. Along the way, she meets a young man named Gabriel who knows a great deal about zombies and how to kill them, and that's because he's been hunting them his whole life. He was there when the first zombie outbreak took place during the Nika riot in Rome in the year 532. He was bitten, but due to a strange genetic abnormality, the virus didn't kill him. Instead, it made him immortal, unable to die, unable to grow older, and almost entirely immune to most forms of bodily harm. Gabriel is tired of living endlessly and watching the world pass him by, so he just wants to die, and he thinks that by helping Max escape with the vaccine and get it mass produced, his hope is that the vaccine will kill the virus in him and let him die at last. The two don't always see eye to eye, Max trying to be the hopeful optimistic, while Gabriel is cold and pragmatic, knowing the best ways to combat zombies since he knows more about them than anyone. It's a fun character dynamic, and it lets me play with a few dumb zombie tropes and flip them on their heads. And there are some other really creative things you can do with zombies, and I hate to keep bringing it up all the time, but even the anime One Piece handled zombies very well in my opinion. In the Thriller Bark arc, the Straw Hat crew lands on an island of zombies, but the zombies aren't just undead corpses. They're corpses with the souls of living people put inside them by means of a shadow power. The zombies in this have the personalities of the soul that's been put into them, so even though their bodies might look different, their personality is very unique. They serve their master loyally, the master being the main bad guy of the arc. They serve their master loyally, and they have no means of contradicting him or fighting against him, and will do anything asked. And the physical strength of the body combines with the knowledge and abilities of the soul within them, creating a very powerful warrior. It's a unique way of looking at zombies. Is it the way that I think every one of them should be done? No, but it's unique enough that it's at least different, and I enjoyed it.
Don't put me back on the ground, jackass!
It's an old man with serious injuries.
Are you nuts? It's a zombie! Don't make fun of me!
And then there are other anime, of course, that try to handle zombies like High School of the Dead, which I think is just abysmally awful. I only watched like 4 episodes of that and then I quit because it just got really, really stupid. You want to talk about zombie cliches that go just way too far? That's one. At the end of the day, most zombie stories just don't impress me. Zombies themselves don't strike me as intimidating unless in a large group, but then again, I could say the same thing about an angry mob. The fear of being turned into one is indeed a sobering one, but I find that a bit of common sense and ingenuity helps prevent that outcome. With most scary monsters, it's a battle between human wit and supernatural abilities, but with zombies, it's just common sense in a steady hand versus a walking, moaning corpse. If handled well, you could have good stories there, perhaps some interesting ideas or new ways of taking the zombie genre, but so far, all we've gotten is zombies that run faster. Frankly, there's gotta be more than that. Maybe if zombies were smarter, or zombies could trick their prey, or they could organize. Something to make them more unique, or maybe change up the way survivors deal with it, or the kinds of locations you could confront them in. There have to be new ways to approach this. If not, I'm afraid this whole genre is just another dead body that just won't stop shambling along, moaning and groaning as it seeks something better to sink its teeth into. How very ironic. The zombie genre is itself a zombie. Whatever the case, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Take care.